The first interview question is, how many test cases you can write per a day? If somebody asks this kind of question to you, what will be your answer? Answering, I can write 5 test cases, or I will be writing 10 test cases, or I will be writing 15 test cases, or I will be writing 100 test cases. On what basis you are going to tell to the interviewer that you will be writing these many test cases? You cannot go and blindly tell I can write these many number of test cases, because in order to write a test cases, there are a lot of dependencies will be there. What kind of requirement which interviewer is talking about, whether it is a UI or a backend or a functionality and so on. Based on the requirements, we can decide what number of test cases which we can write, and as well as what kind of domain which you are going to test it, whether it is a e-commerce domain, big data, artificial intelligence, mobile apps, and so on, as well as the complexity of each requirement. Unless your interviewer does not talk about any details about requirements, details about domain, and complexity involved on each requirements or an application, definitely you should not answer any particular number of test cases. And also how complexity and whether those requirements or user stories are easy to understandable or not. That is also very crucial in order to answer these questions. Unless if they are not providing all these answer to you, you should not go and tell any particular number. There is no hard and fast rule like these many number of test cases only I should write every day. Then the second interview question is, how many number of test cases you can write per a given requirement or a user story in that matter. Here also there is no hard and fast rule. Here also you should not go and answer I can write 1 test case per requirement, 2, 3, 4 and so on. There is no hard and fast rule. Is there with a given rule of thumb, minimum 2 test cases which we can write, which is straightforward positive and negative test cases, and it can go up to 4 test cases as well by considering boundary conditions, equivalence, partitioning cases, up to maximum 4 test cases which you can write. Again, each requirement is again a complex, and if it is broken down into further detailed sub user stories or sub requirements, then again your test cases will grow up like anything. At least basic minimum is 2 to 4 we can easily write per a given user story. How many number of test cases can you execute per day? Again, this is also a very crucial interview question, and whether can I go and execute 10 test cases per day, 20 test cases per day, 30 test cases per day, or 50 test cases per day I can execute every day. Is it possible? Now again, in order to understand this question and in order to answer this question, you should get a detailed answer. What are the various prerequisites you should make up in order to execute the test cases, as well as what kind of environment preparation we will have to make up to execute each test cases. That is also important, because the additional time will be taken up for executing those test cases which required higher prerequisite. And if it is just a UI functionality, it is very easy for us to just follow the steps and we can get it done. And if it is a backend, if it is backend test cases, then again a complexity increases. You will be required to have a knowledge of testing databases, writing SQL queries. Again, based on that also, the number of executions may depend, or it may increase or it may decrease. Again, the business functionality, if it is too much complexity, the business functionality, if each test case covers 100 steps or 50 steps or 200 steps, then amount of executing those test cases also will increase drastically. Based on all these information, you can arrive per test case how many hours or how many minutes you will be taking it out. Based on that, in a given day, you will be working around 6 to 7 hours, remaining 1 or 2 hours for your other jobs like attending any meetings or dropping emails or sending notes to your leaders and so on. As a tester, you might have found a major bug while testing it, but there is no developer is present in the office who can fix this major bug, because we will have to ship the product today itself. What will you do as a tester? That was the question. Now, how will you answer this question? As a tester, our job is to, once we find a major bug, we should go and log the bug into the defect tracking tool in detail by providing all the information required to fix that bug. That is the first step we should do as a tester. Then the second thing we should also do is we should analyze what is the criticality or what is the critical impact to the client. Let's say if developer is not present and it cannot be fixed today, can we still ship the product to the client with having certain workaround? If there is a workaround is there, definitely we should document as part of the release notes whenever we are shipping to the client. But this information you have to clearly call out to the management team, your test manager or development manager, saying that this is a major defect, but there is a minimal impact to the client and there is a workaround is there for this issue, and client need not panic. We may get an immediate patch or immediate hot fixes next day itself. There should be some workaround we should plan if developer is not there. Still we wanted to release the product. Let's say this major bug is completely a showstopper. It is going to impact the critical functionality of the application. Then definitely you should bring to the test manager and development manager on the impact to them immediately, and also look for any backup developers are available in the absence of a main developer. If there is a backup developer is there, then there is no issue is there. Otherwise, we'll have to escalate to your test manager and development manager. They have to make a note of it and they have to find the solution for it. As a tester, it is not your responsibility to deal with whether developer is there or not. It is not your headache. And to the question of whether can we release or not release, it is not the tester's responsibility. It is the decision of stakeholders to take a decision. Upper management has to take a decision, not by the tester here. It is up to the management, and as a tester or as a testing team, we will be providing our input to the leadership team. Again, the leadership team will take the decision whether to release the product to the client or not to release to the client based on the commitment with the client. This is how we should explain to this important question. As a tester, what will you do if the application which you are testing has a wide exchange of information on the various applications? For any application which we are testing, if that application is transferring or exchanging of information on various multiple application or multiple different third-party tools, then what will you do as a tester? That is the question here. Then how will you answer this question? Here the main aspect is, here there is an exchange of information is happening between the multiple application. That means there are a lot of integration points we'll have to test it, because one application to the another application, the lot of information exchange is happening. In order to have that, the strong integration testing is very much needed, and we'll have to introduce and we'll have to tighten the integration testing in order to solve this problem. The second question is, as a tester, what will you do if the customer application is specifically targeted for a wide audience? The wide audience means the application can be exposed to US audience or UK audience or European audience or Indian audience or Chinese audience. The application can get exposed to a wide range of audience. Then as a tester, what is your plan in order to test this kind of application? The application is widely targeted with a huge base of users across different countries. Then we'll have to perform various different types of testing in order to cater this client needs. The first thing is, we'll have to ensure that the application, it could be web application or a mobile application, we'll have to test it on different operating system. It is a more of a different cross platforms, and also we should ensure we will have to get tested with a different browser combinations. It could be Chrome, IE, Firefox, and so on. Lot of browsers available across different operating system we'll have to cover, as well as the localization also we'll have to test it, because if the application is getting exposed to different countries like China, we will have to introduce with the Chinese or Indian, we have Hindi, then application should be able to adapt to those local changes as well. If the application is exposed on the mobile app, then definitely we'll have to test different combinations of different mobile combinations. Either it could be using a physical devices we'll be using to test, or we'll be using as a emulator to test different combinations. That would ensure that we are really testing for the complete targeted wide audience as per the customer requirement. The next question is, as a tester, what will you do if the project did not have any documentation? Here you will have a zero documentation. Project has come to you. Now as a tester, how will you test this application where you have no documentation at all? Then as a tester, what will you do? As a tester, in case there is no documentation is available, what we have to do is we'll have to recreate the requirement scenario by exploring the application. Here we will be adopting the exploratory testing mechanism where we are going to explore the complete application. Then we will be deriving with a certain number of requirement scenarios or user stories, and those requirement scenarios are user stories will be getting reviewed with BAs, product owners or client, and get it reviewed from them and get the feedback, and we will be finalizing those requirements. Once we are recreating the requirement scenarios, then we will be finalizing, and based on that requirement scenarios, once the approval is done, we will be taking care of those requirements. Then test scenarios will be written and further detailing out with the detailed test cases. This is how we will be managing the show when there is no documentations is available with the testing team. Question here is, tell me something about a situation, especially this is for a software tester, when there is a job having a big changes are happening, like earlier as a tester you are only concentrating on manual testing. Now the management or leadership team is focusing for you to move into automation testing. Then how do you adjust for this kind of situation or this kind of big changes which is happening in your organization? This is the really a tough situational based interview question. Now how will you handle this kind of situation? Now you should answer this question in a very confident way, and you should talk about what are the things you do when this kind of situation happens for you, where you wanted to move from manual to automation testing in a shorter span. Now first thing we should do here is, because any of leadership team or management team, they put a plan for you to, like, you need to move from manual to automation, then you should also work with them to understand what kind of tools they are buying, what kind of programming language that tool does supports. Then definitely you can tell the interviewer that I am going to learn those programming languages as quicker as possible. The second thing you should answer to the interviewer that you will also be learning, it is not just learning the programming languages, you should also understand overall automation concepts and basics as well. This is a very important aspect. You should inform to the interviewer that you will be learning all the core concepts of automation. Then the third thing will also be telling about, you will be learning about all the aspects of different kinds of automation frameworks available, so that you can efficiently use this automation framework in order to develop or implementing the automation in their projects. Then the next thing we should talk about here is, you will also be learning about reusable aspects. This is very important, because it is not just adding 100 test cases, 200 test cases into automation bucket. It is more about how can I reuse, how can I optimize. That is also very crucial while doing automation, because as the number of test cases increases, then if you are not putting the right thought process well in the beginning about reusable models, optimizing the things, definitely it would be a overkill in the later stages. In the next aspect, you should convey to your interviewer that along with this, you will also be learning about handling the test data mechanism in the automation perspective, because this is also very crucial, especially whenever we are trying to bring automation. Test data becomes very crucial, because we will be handling everything in a more automatable fashion. That means you should be well versed in handling this test data in an automation perspective. Then once you are able to learn all these different concepts more in terms of automation, then you can start adding small test cases, small manual test cases into automation bucket, Once you are able to comfortably handle to add small piece of manual test cases, then you can definitely go and add more test cases, and also you will be exploring in depth of coding, which is very much required to handle the reusable aspects, handling different kinds of test data, and even developing the automation framework in the later stages. This is how you should explain how you will be reacting, or how will you act whenever this kind of big changes are happening in your organization, where you will be moving from manual to automation testing. As a tester, sometimes what happens, certain developers may not provide the information very quickly, and sometimes they will be very slow in responding as well for your questions. Then what will you do as a software tester? That is the interview question, where you should answer in this type of situation as a tester, what will you do? So this is very critical and crucial issue as well, because it is more of handling the people also a matter here, because sometimes developers also will be busy. They may not be able to respond very quickly, because they are also occupied with various kinds of work as well, with a lot of pressure on the developers as well. Now with this kind of situation as a tester, our job is to first we should communicate to the developer that we are looking for certain information as a tester. That is the first thing we should communicate to the developer. In case if the developer is very quick enough that he can respond back, then it is well and good. In case if he is not responding back, then we should choose an alternative communication mechanism, such as we may pick his mobile number, then call to that person if we are working completely remotely, or if we are working in the same place, then it is better go and talk to that person individually than waiting for the email response. That is also a second option you can choose to get the answer very quickly as a tester. Now even by doing all these things, even sometimes developers will be busy, they may not be able to pick the call, developer is not able to talk to you even when you visit his cubicle. Then what you should do is you should set up a meeting with him in his calendar, at least park for 15 to 30 minutes, what you wanted to discuss, raise all the questions in the meeting invite, then set up a meeting with him so that developer can accept that meeting and he can come and answer all your queries within that 15 to 30 minutes. This is the second way of getting the information from the developer. In case if any of these 2 to 3 methods are not working, that means there is a really a issue with the developer who is really not responding or really not bothered about your questions. Then the next ultimate things you should do as a tester is you should go and escalate this information with what all the things you did from your part to get the response from the developer. Irrespective of doing all those activities, still developer is not responding, then it is your job to becomes escalating this to your test lead or a test manager for their help, so that they can work with the development manager to get the proper response for your queries. This is how you should answer in any interview whenever they ask this kind of situational based interview questions. What if the software is so buggy it cannot be tested at all? This is a common issue which normally software team normally faces most of the time. Whatever the build which is given by the development team is not up to the mark most of the time, and initial stages the software will be of so much buggy. Then how can we test at all? That is the question here. Then how will you answer this question? The first thing we should do here is whatever the build if they give by the development team, first thing we have to do is whatever the buggy it may have, what we should do is we should identify or list all the blocking or critical issues in the first place itself and report it back to the development team. That is the first thing as a tester we should do. Then the second thing is, because of this, our entire software schedule also will be having a major impact. The major signs for buggy software, because of development team is not performing enough unit testing, or they're not performing enough integration testing, even the kind of poor code design which they made, even
There could be issues in the build or release process as well. Because of all these challenges, we might see the software or a build which they give for testing will be of a more of a buggy most of the time. In future, we might see huge software schedule issues as well, big impact on the cost of the project, timeline of the project, and quality of the project. Because of that, as a testing team, we should bring to the leadership team all these issues, and also we should work for the future correction in terms of bringing high number of unit testing, having a good integration testing mechanism, and having a good designs as well, plus fixing all build and release related processes as well. This is how you should explain.
Sometimes certain clients will be very aggressive and they wanted to get the things as quickly as possible, and they will ask you to do the work as quicker enough, and sometimes they are more unrealistic as well. Now, as a tester, how will you handle this situation? How will you handle the client in this case as a tester? Now, what we should do here is, whenever client asks for an unrealistic timeline to complete the testing, now what we should do here is, we should not go and agree immediately, because we should buy in certain time and we should do a detailed effort evaluation. When we have a detailed estimations are available with you for each activity, whatever the client has requested, and for each activity what is the different efforts and what are the different testing process we should follow as per your test plan or a test strategy, which is again agreed with the client earlier. Because whatever the commitment which you are going to give to the client will have to look as per the test plan or test strategy which is agreed with the client earlier. We should not deviate with any of these plan or strategy whenever we are committing with the client. Once we are able to document detailed estimation with the reasons or data associated with, then we should go back to the client and explain what are your viewpoint, what are the things we can do with the given available timeline, what are the best cases we can execute, what are the good cases which I can execute, or what are the worst situation I can execute, by considering various risks as well. By providing detailed explanation in this way to the client, definitely even the client is aggressive, even the client is telling the unrealistic things, even the tough client can also easily agree if you have right set of evaluation, right set of estimation, and right set of data is there, you can easily convince any difficult client as well. So in this way you should answer this question. And the next question is, a critical bug has been identified just a day before we are deploying a safety medical software. Safety medical software is, this software will be deployed into the hospitals or any healthcare system. Now suddenly someone is pressurizing you, someone is pressurizing the tester not to log the defect. That is the scenario here. As a tester, what should we do whenever we are getting this kind of request, especially when we are testing the critical software like medical software? Whenever we get this kind of situation, what we should do here is, because this kind of requests are literally unethical, these are not ethical, because we are playing with the medical software which are very critical in nature. If you are going to deploy this medical software with the critical bugs, means there is a huge impact to the human lives as well. When you deploy into the production in the hospitals or healthcare systems, it becomes very critical, dangerous to the human being as well. And the second one is, because whenever we are working for this medical software or pharma domain, there will be a detailed compliances we have to follow. If someone ask you to not to follow, then that is not the right things as well, because it will go against the compliances, which is again illegal. Tomorrow, after deploying this medical software, if they lost so many lives, so many human lives, then it can lead to a bigger legal battle. It can
impact to the organization as well. Because of that, as a tester, what you should do here is you should log the defect at any cost. You should not forget whoever tells whatever. You should log the defect whenever you identify based on your test execution. Then you should escalate. You should escalate to your nearest lead. It could be your test lead or your project head to make a serious note with them take a decision. But at least at your level, you should not follow any of these unethical procedures, non-compliance aspect. It can lead to bad name to your company as well as legal suits in the future. As a tester, what will you do if you keep getting an unstable build for testing? This is a very crucial. Sometimes what happens, most of the time we keep getting unstable build in the initial days. Then how will you handle this kind of situation as a software tester? So if you are getting that kind of issues when you are getting unstable build most of the time, then what we should do is, as a tester, you should test those builds which are coming as a unstable builds by working closely with those builds and find out which kind of functionalities or features are really breaking every time whenever you are getting for the testing. That is the first thing we should do as a tester. Then the second thing is we should document whatever the findings you have made across these functionalities or features which are failing more often or more frequently in every build. Because of that, the build getting unstable every time. Then what we should do is, once you document all your findings, set up a meeting with a test lead or a dev manager and discuss with them what are the challenges you guys are facing, especially in terms of frequently failing the test cases in a certain areas or certain features. Because of that, the build itself becomes very unstable. Along with the discussion with the test lead and dev manager as well, also propose for a number of unit test coverage in these areas. It may happen that there is a lesser number of unit tests, even lesser number of integration test cases in those areas. Maybe we should propose to add up more unit test cases by the development team plus the integration testing perspective as well before they are going to hand over the build for the testing team. That would guarantee at least whenever they add a new code or whenever they modify the code, then these unit tests and integration tests will be running before they hand over to the testing team. We can reduce the number of failures. Plus, we should also propose for having smoke testing and sanity testing is also run by the development team, because in the smoke testing or sanity testing will have a critical test cases will be there. By doing this method regularly, frequently, definitely we can reduce the instability in the builds. As a tester, what should you do when you miss the bug? As a tester, what will be your reaction when you find yourself that you have missed the bugs? The first thing we should do here is we should not blame the others. There could be 100 reasons maybe there why you have missed the bug, why you are not able to catch the bug. There can be 100 reasons are there. You should not go and blame developers, you should not go and blame the requirements, or you should not blame anybody in that matter. You should be staying calm and you should be not blaming any other people. And the second thing is, if possible, try to admit it the mistakes or accept that mistake. And what we should do here is, next thing is there any correct things we can make as part of these mistakes? Because if this is causing major problem to the client, then you should make an immediate course correction should be there. By performing the root cause analysis, immediately you should provide a workaround or a fix for the customer if it is a critical defect. That is the first thing we should do as a tester by talking to the development team. If fix is not required, if there is a workaround, then we should provide the workaround as well to the customer. Once we have this fix is there and client is fine, then we should add this as part of our lesson learned, because same mistake or similar mistakes you should not do in the future as well. The next question is it possible for a tester to find all bugs in the system? It is not at all possible to cover every possible combination in the application. It is really not practical. It is highly impossible to find out all the defects before releasing to the customer.
As a tester, how will you reduce the overall cost of the testing project? This is the very important questions where they wanted to understand as a tester, how can you put certain effort to reduce the overall cost. First thing we should understand, what would be the overall cost for a software testing? Normally, software testing in agile projects comes around 25% of the overall project cost. In even certain cases, it can reach up to 40% as well. With this huge cost of software testing, how can we reduce certain portion of this overall project cost by doing differently? The first thing we should do here is, while hiring or while taking any test engineer or software tester, we should ensure that the software testers should also have a domain expertise with them, not just software testing skill. Their work efficiency is very higher than the person who doesn't have any domain expertise as a software tester. Second thing is, normally as a software tester, our main job is to ensure not 100% bug free. That is not at all possible. The main purpose is to ensure we can deliver an acceptable quality of a product, not as a 100% bug free product. That is really not possible. Third important aspect in reducing the overall cost of the project is, we wanted to avoid wasting our time only on focusing on minor bugs and associated cost. For the minor bugs we found, and even cost of fixing is also very high. Just we are talking about minor bugs, it doesn't add any much value to the overall project. We don't want to spend too much time in identifying only minor bugs, and developer will be keep fixing those minor bugs. That is not our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal is to find out major bugs and critical bugs. Fourth important aspect in reducing the overall cost of the testing project here is, we wanted to ensure that we wanted to reduce as much as manual testing is possible, and we wanted to bring automation testing wherever the continuous repetition is there, and we wanted to ensure that we wanted to utilize as much as open source software than licensed software. In that way, we can still reduce the overall automation cost as well here, because we are going for an open source tool like Selenium. And the fifth aspect in reducing the overall cost of the project is, we wanted to start our testing work as early as possible. And the sixth perspective in reducing the overall cost is, we can offshore our testing effort into the low cost countries. If there is a project is there in US, and if they wanted to bring the testing effort into the offshore perspective like India, then definitely the overall cost of the project will definitely reduce. And the seventh important crucial thing is, we wanted to use our test metrics efficiently, because as and when we start measuring the test metrics very effectively, efficiently on every activity we perform in the testing project, definitely we can measure the things, and also we can track how efficiently we are doing, and we can fix the gap. This eighth important aspect here is, we wanted to stop spending too much time in reporting the complex stuff. Especially this is happening in most of the project, where every stakeholders will be asking our test reporting in a different format, different ways, all those things. We wanted to keep our test reporting in a very simple and plain manner, so that we won't be, as a tester, we won't be spending too much time in preparing the test reports itself. The ninth aspect here is, we wanted to bring efficient, or we wanted to adopt more efficient perspective in terms of test data creation or test data management. Similarly, we wanted to bring in efficiency in preparing our test environment or managing the overall test environment perspective as well. If you are trying to bring more efficiency in the test data creation and test environment, definitely the overall cost also we can reduce as a overall testing project. And the 10th one is, we wanted to bring the risk-based testing approach, where we wanted to not to go and test every aspect, everything here. We wanted to bring our testing perspective more on the risk-based approach. If you are trying to adopt these 10 important crucial ideas or crucial things, definitely we can reduce the overall cost of the testing project.